Hi, it's Dana Warren here, and you're on the next stop for the Alleyway Stamps video blog hop. And today I'm going to show you how to use some stencils and embossing powder along with embossing paste, and that's how I made this background on this circle on this card that I'm going to be making today. So to get started, some of the supplies we're going to need are a few stamp sets. We're going to need the background check, jibber jabber, and bot time. We're also going to be using some embossing paste. This is the white, just some washi tape, along with the stencil. I can't find the actual wrapping, but I know it's die cuts with a view, and then a little kind of applicator thing. I'm going to use a couple different inks, some Memento dye ink, and some VersaFine pigment ink. I'm also going to use some embossing powder. I'm going to actually use this antique gold right here. I'm going to be using some Inktense pencils, and also a Copic color splendor and this kind of gold calligraphy pen. It's probably pretty old. I just found it in my stash of stuff. And let's see, you're also going to need just some little bit of watercolor paper. Alright, so I just cut a piece of watercolor paper into any size, and I'm going to just lay my stencil over kind of pretty much any direction, any way you want to, and I just put it onto my mat with some washi tape. Alright, and then I'm going to be using the embossing paste with my stencil. And I'm just going to smear it all over my card, my watercolor paper I should say. And I like to put it on thick. I'll go through and actually take all that extra off, but I like to just put it on. And I use the back of those little, it's actually, I think, yeah, an old Cricut scraper thing from back in the day. Alright, I'm going to put the lid on this so it doesn't dry out. And I'm going to carefully peel up my stencil. There we go. Alright, so now usually you just set this aside to dry, but first I'm going to add some embossing powder to it. So I'm going to just clean up my mat of all the extra paste that got on there. Alright, and I'm also going to come through and kind of clean up these edges here, just so they're a little bit more smooth. Alright, so you want to add your embossing powder before your embossing paste dries. And I suggest using some embossing powder, especially for this kind of pattern. It's a little bit bigger. Using embossing powder that's kind of big kernels. I know it's probably hard to see, but if you use smaller, finer embossing powder, it doesn't quite cover and it melts very nice. So you can kind of see with this one. I actually used this on a different card and it worked wonderfully, and I thought, oh, I use, you know, whatever, a couple other colors that I have, and I tried this one and it's a much more finer powder, and it doesn't quite give you the coverage that at least I like. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a little just more bumpier, and you can kind of see that the white of the embossing paste kind of come through. So I suggest using as big as kernels basically as you can. And this is pretty big. So you just want to put it on your paper. And I don't have very much left, so I have to do this multiple times. Okay, so you get the idea that you want to cover your embossing paste with the embossing powder. Let me just put this back. And I already have one complete. So here's one that has the loose powder on it. You want to set it aside and let it dry, probably overnight. I tried doing it once after only a couple hours, and I found when you melt the powder it kind of boils. So it's probably because the powder underneath wasn't quite dry, because some was okay, some wasn't. So just to be on the safe side, I let this dry overnight so I know it's the embossing paste is good and dry. So I'm just going to, okay. So another reason why the bigger kind of grained powder is that it kind of just all melts and you get this very nice coverage, whereas the finer powder just doesn't cover. You know, there's probably just not enough of it there to melt it, give you this nice glossy shine. And I also like how the embossing paste kind of really raises it up. It's a lot higher than it would be if you just emboss straight onto your cardstock. So next I'm going to take this panel and I'm going to die cut just some basic circles. In my card I only used one, but I'm probably going to do a second one and just kind of play with the placement to see if maybe I like a second circle on there or not. So I'm just going to go give this a quick die cut. Okay, so I cut it through, and you have to run it through a few times to make sure it gets nice and cut. Alright, so next we're going to kind of make our little robot guy here. So I can set these aside for now. Kind of wipe off all the stray powder. Alright, I'm going to use this little guy here in the Bot Time stamp set. Go. And I'm just going to use a piece of scrap watercolor paper. And since I'm going to be using a Copic marker, I'm going to use a Memento Tuxedo Black ink to ink this guy up. Unfortunately, my mat on this table that I'm on is not very flat, so it's hard to get a good impression. One day I'll have my own craft room and I can just do it from my craft table. Let's see, no, it's still not very good. Alright, so I'm going to have to do this guy off to the side. Alright, so that's better. Alright, so I'm just going to cut him out a little bit. So I have all this extra stuff here. Alright, so I'm going to give my little robot here just a quick color from these Inktense colored pencils. Let's see how it is. Need black. So I used a green, kind of this purpley red, in black and this blue here. Okay. So I'm also going to be using a Copic Colors blender here. And what I did was I'll use the blue first. Just color a little bit of pencil down, kind of where I wanted a little bit of color, like here on his eye. Not a whole lot. And then I just took the blender and I just kind of flipped it out, and the pencil kind of reacts with the colorless blender. Kind of lightens it up, kind of spreads that color around a little bit. And then I just do it off to get rid of any color left on my nib. So you can just kind of do it until you get it where you like it. And there, now he's all colored. So it's kind of a quick way to kind of add a little bit of color to your image. The last thing I added was this calligraphy pen, which is in gold. Kind of goes with my gold embossing powder. And I just kind of colored in his belly here to kind of help tie it all together. And it's a nice little opaque gold. It's not the perfect tip here, but it's what I had. So now my guy's done. Now all I'm going to do is just cut him out. Okay, so like my card, I have a background on it, so I'm going to get my card base and add this circle background to it. And that's from the background check set. I always line it up on my mat so I know it's straight, and then put it on my block. Alright. Now to ink this up, I'm going to use VersaFine, which is nice pigment ink. And I line up my card base and kind of basically pick a line so I know that it's going to be straight when I stamp. So I think about there. And I'm going to press extra firm. That's my table's not very straight. Yep. You can see in the middle there, but that's okay. Alright, so now I'm going to add just a little bit more of my gold marker to a couple of these circles. Kind of random wherever. Alright, so I'm going to take my die cut pieces here, and I'm going to just kind of arrange them. Maybe I'll use these to kind of hide the stamping that didn't work out. And I can take my little guy. I think I'll probably add him about there. And then for sentiment, I was kind of thinking this is kind of like a cool little boy's card. So I used, let's see, Jibber Jabber. And I used the U and the rock. And I just kind of laid it on my card base, so I kind of know where I want it to go. And I kind of think of this little guy kind of looking at the sentiment. So I can do that. So I'm going to ink him up real quick. Like that. And then I'm going to add my circles with foam dots. Alright, and then my battery is actually just about ready to go dead. So last I'm just going to actually kind of glue him on like that. And you can see for this card I'd use the 2, or you can just use 1 if you like. So I hope you like the stenciling, embossing paste and powder kind of technique here. Just one more way you can use your stencils. So now it's time to hop on to the next stop. Thanks for joining me.